From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture in the ultimate adventure, life itself, which is ironic because we're going to talk about a show where many people died. We are going to celebrate the good stuff and, as Ken was saying off the air, cope with some of the sad stuff that happened in this episode of The Acolyte. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. You're dangerously close to a too soon file, but you're here with us, and I'm with you.
And I'm Jennifer Landa. That's all I got for now. We're going to process this together.
We'll process it all together. We are going to get right into this, but we do want to take an opportunity real quick to let you know that we are doing a live stream. Jennifer is very busy with adventures of the scholastic nature, the academic nature. So sadly, Jennifer can't be joining us. But Ken and I are going to be doing a live stream this Friday, June 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific. It's just an open Q&A. So come with your drinks, alcoholic or non, to toast to the memory of Yord. Spoilers. And any questions you want, any speculation about Acolyte, the future Star Wars, all sorts of great and fun stuff on that Q&A live stream. That's again Friday, June 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific. And with that, let's get into the Acolyte. We are discussing Season 1, Episode 5, Night, written by Cor Adana and Cameron Squires, directed by Alex Garcia Lopez. It's the same director as last week's episode, Day, Cor Adana, as everybody says. Even my wife, when the episode finished, like, that's a Star Wars name. That writer's got a Star Wars name. Cor Adana, we talked a little bit last week about his history as a security analyst and working on Mr. Robot. And Cameron Squires is not the same co-writer as last week. Cameron Squires has some credits on several animated comedies, Fantasy Space and Agent Elvis. Worked on WandaVision and the upcoming Agatha Harkness spinoff. So another writer who is relatively young in the business, getting a nice big swing and I think doing a great job. Ken, any thoughts on the creative team?
Love the new names and love the ones from last week that got to carry over. This is clearly an episode sliced in two. Oof, there's a too soon thing, which is something we discussed last week and something that might come up today, but makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Cor Adana, that's a cool name. Yeah.
The slash between day and night, it feels like a literal lightsaber slash, and separating these two episodes. Jennifer, any thoughts on the creative team?
I looked at Cameron Squires to see what they had done, and they're definitely a newer writer, I would say. And I love that. I love that this show is bringing in, I don't necessarily younger, but certainly newer writers, and they're knocking it out of the park. And I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that some of these writers, like I have no idea how old they actually are, but younger to Hollywood is great. Right. I think older writers and people who've had different life experiences, I don't think Hollywood should be you have to be a writer's assistant when you're 16 in order to get into Hollywood. So I'm excited to see people who've had different life experiences and made their way to their dream. And congratulations to all of these great writers and creators. So moving on into the big picture of the episode itself. Jennifer, I would love to start with your overall reaction. Do you love this episode? Like it? Struggle with it? What was your overall reaction?
It was fantastic. I think it was one of the best episodes of the Star Wars streaming era for so many reasons that we are going to dive into today. But it's like, how do you balance the fun, the pew-pew as we talk about, the laser swords, the fight sequences with the emotional weight of Star Wars and these deep messages and deep themes? And it was all right there. And you can just tell that this show, it just has so much heart. Leslie Headland is just a wonderful, I guess, executive producer, right? And kind of captain of the ship, steering this ship into a wonderful direction. I just thought it was fantastic.
Oh, wow. I really love what you're saying. Ken, what are your thoughts? What was your overall reaction?
I think I'm the meat in a sandwich here. I did not love it right away. And I have to admit there was some context. Long, busy day, stressful day. Didn't even watch it on the couch. Watched this on a treadmill on an iPad. And it ended, and I went, okay. And I just kind of went on with my day. About an hour later, I relaxed. I was having a microwave mac and cheese dinner, just sitting there relaxing. And this is going to seem weird. There's normal things to talk about. I think one too many wipes. I wish the last week's episode and this episode were one, and all those kind of things, which are valid and things to discuss. But those are kind of rolling through my head. And I just started thinking about what happened, the deaths. the assumed and alleged deaths, right? There's always a window for those not to be real. We can talk about that. But then I just started laughing. So it seems weird. I was laughing because I was like, yeah, that's what you should have done. And I really loved what they did. I loved how, I don't want to say set us up for heartbreak, but a lot of Yord stickers in the world that are now in memoriam stickers. And I just kind of was like, yeah, I really was on board. Second viewing, a lot more deep, some great stuff to talk about, some great highlights. I think this blows the story wide open. This is the benefit of a new era, new characters, where everyone can be on that kind of chopping block. So I get that. But yeah, I landed in a very positive space.
That's great. Yeah, I am totally at the point of loving it. I got a couple little nitpicks that we'll discuss, toward the end of the episode when we talk about our nitpicks. But I just kind of really wanted to focus on the love because I so love this episode. I will throw out there, Ken, that I think what you said is really important. I think it is important to own what we bring to art. It's a conversation, and when we see it and how we see it and who we see it with affects us. Like I stand by some of my my critiques and problems with the structure of last week's episode, but they were made more emotional for me because I'd had an extremely stressful day where nothing was happening fast enough. And then I watched an episode where I objectively felt nothing happened fast enough. And it made me feel emotionally stronger, even though I objectively agree. And I think it's really good to own that. So kudos to you. But for this episode, man, did I love it. I think this is fully the show that I've been longing for. I've enjoyed everything, but I was so down for everything that had been described about this show, which is exactly what you were saying, Jennifer, which is the beautiful marriage of lightsabers and philosophy. This is the height of my favorite part of Star Wars, the thrill and the depth working together as one, sitting there and watching this episode and going, wow, that's such a cool move that this horrible monster did. And that's so awesome. And I kind of want to act it out on the playground. And also my heart is utterly broken because that horrible monster shouldn't be doing this. And I'm feeling the thrill and the utter tragedy at the same time. And it's, something that a lot of things can do, but Star Wars really combines the whiz bang and the horror and the depth and the trauma. And this was just all, to me, lightsabers and philosophy. We'll get into the big ideas, but I thought a lot of this function on not just Sith perspective, but the essence of the Sith and Jedi debate, what they stand for and why they make the choices and how they justify the choices. I always go on also about wanting Star Wars to have a good mix of the new and old, like the first, Star Wars film in 1977. It relied on a lot of familiar things, but did them in a brand new way that nobody had ever seen before. And that can be hard to do on a franchise that's pushing 50. And this episode did that for me in the action, in the philosophy of like, that's all familiar. That's, that's the heart of Star Wars. But I'm seeing it expressed and executed in ways that I haven't seen before. So perfect marriage of the new and the old for me. Yeah, Ken?
No, I really agree with that there. Seeing new things, but also feeling like you're roaming around the Phantom Menace, which we'll talk about the lightsaber fights, but a lot of talk coming into the show of those kind of lightsaber fights. So it was like good to feel home again. But like I said, I think I appreciated more than any other episode thus far in the series of the new and the unknown leading to interesting story choices that, yes, admittedly, you couldn't do as much as maybe, is Kenobi going to die at the hands of this character in the series? No. So it's a different kind of tension and it's a different kind of purpose of story. This one, that felt all new to me. And I like that.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more when we get into the heart of the ideas, but I kind of want to just separate out a couple of the big ticket things that I think a lot of people are talking about and talk about them a little bit here at the top. I want to talk about the deaths in particular. Like we can get into the how and the why and what do they mean and all that. But Jennifer, how did you just feel about the big deaths? Were you expecting Jecki and Yord to go? Were you shocked? How do you feel about the deaths?
I think that it was done really well because I was so focused on who the stranger was, and we had all obviously speculated who it was, right? So that wasn't a surprise. So when it was revealed, I'm like, oh, it's Chimere. Whoa! Like it was, the deaths were the shock. That was the
Mm.
twist in my mind. Like that, the whole twist of who is this stranger, it was like, no, it's been obvious from the start. The twist was that these characters that in this episode I was writing, I'm Team Yord now. Actually, I do like Jackie, and both of the characters got killed. And I think that that's intentional, right? Like whenever you watch a show and their storyline in that episode, I remember on The Walking Dead, right? Like all of a sudden the character in the background now has a major storyline. You're like, oh, they're dying.
Yeah, and a really nice tender moment, right? Like,
right.
oh, he kissed a child. He's dead by the end of the hour. Yeah.
Right. But what I thought that this show did very well was that it did not give it this like necessarily dramatic moment where I expected it. It was a head snap. Then he was gone like that. It was this brutality of Jackie, right? Being impaled. Shocking. Very Game of Thrones, as I always like to reference. And I just thought it was fantastic. It's what I've been wanting for Star Wars is death. That is because then because then it's like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen, and that is more real life, and people can die in an instant, and that is where I'm at right now. Right?
Yeah, I agree with you about. I think it was extremely well structured on multiple levels. Like sometimes, for writing, you talk about sort of a sleight of hand, like you want the distraction hand, and then the sleight of hand is going. And this is like Dexter Jettster was doing it because there were like 3 distraction hands while the real thing was happening. There's just multiple levels of we put Jackie in danger with May, and my wife said, like, I thought she was safe because she survived May because I expected her to die then, and it lured me into this false bit of confidence. All of Yord's obsessions with rules, just kind of on and on. I think there were good distractions so that you could be surprised by those deaths that were maybe could be expected, but happened in a just sudden, vicious, more realistic way. Ken, what are your thoughts on the deaths?
Yeah, it could be expected, but it's not even a Star Wars thing, but it's like, they're not gonna. They wouldn't do that, right? It's Daphne Keane, right? She's on the poster. In the back of your head, you just kind of get, it's the red shirt, and everyone kind of tweeted out or put out their ideas of the red shirts, and that made sense. But and very much, in other kind of big shows too. But like you mentioned, the Game of Thrones things, like they have some big shocks, but they also have the. If you read the tea leaves enough, you're like, well, here's Barristan Selmy's big speech. He's a goner. Stop talking, Barristan. I don't want you to die. Like that happens, and they still have some surprises without a doubt. But this had a different feel to it. And you mentioned the chimera of it all. No secret. I think there was some wiggle room. There was Team Coral. And I think they, whether intentional or not, they played with some of the. You've met me before, so you don't remember me. So okay. They play with it, but in the end, it wasn't much of a surprise. But that's actually now where I was struggling with it a little bit before. Now I'm like, it's part of, along with the deaths, this wide open thing. Chimera being the stranger, it's so obvious from the marketing. Like they know we're gonna pick up that he said peace is a lie. We all know the Sith Creed. Some probably have it tattooed on our shoulders. Like not me, but now that seems so on purpose. Like. Yep, you figured it out. Now it's going to happen, and I think that the deaths are in that bucket as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think without being overly sort of hammy about it, of giving them the big speech, I think this episode did, to your notes, Jennifer, make you really like Jackie and Yord. It gave you some fist pumping moments for them, both in terms of the action moments and emotional choice moments. We'll get into some of the Yord stuff here was so great. And I think I don't feel like the marketing was a trick, but I think it did play into like, well, these are the main characters for over 50% of the show. So it gives you that illusion that it's safe. And I think, like you said, I just want to echo the taking full advantage of this being in a new era where characters' fates are up for grabs. I love the legacy stories, and I think there's a lot of you can paint on a dime on a postage stamp and fill out a lot of interesting stuff, even when you know everything about a character. But you can't quite have the tension of will Kenobi make it, and because we know from the first Star Wars he doesn't ultimately. But this, I think, made just such a great use of that, and another one of the reasons that I felt like this episode was sort of like, this is what I was hoping for across the board: action, philosophy, the benefit of characters who can die at any moment. It was great. And all those red shirts, all those red shirt Jedis were also a great distraction because I felt like, maybe Yord or Jeki will go, but we got like 4 or 5 Jedi to chew through first, and we did. Great thoughts on the Khmer reveal. That was the other kind of big thing I just want to be sure to touch on here at the top. Jennifer, how did you feel about the Khmer reveal, given that many of us were speculating? I think, bar bets, Khmer was winning. Coral maybe had a couple points, and some wild people out there had some bets on Vernestra. But for the most part, the fandom was largely expecting Khmer. How did that land for you?
I think previously on an episode I had said, I don't think that it's going to be Chimera because it's too obvious. They're not going to do that. Well, I was wrong, but I think that it really works for 2 reasons. Because the first reason is after it was revealed, I was like, but wait, who trained him? Wait, who is his master? And that is really the focus of this mystery, because that's what all the characters are saying. His fighting style is different. Who trained you? All these questions. That's what the mystery is. It's not who's under the mask, which I think is what I initially thought. The second thing is Manny Jacinto's performance, which sold it so well. That turn, and even how he threaded that hello, like he went back to kind of like that, quirky Chimera when he sees May. I just was like, oh, it's so masterfully done. He was creepy. He was dangerous. He was a new type of villain in Star Wars, which I really love, where I think Leslie Headland even said, we wanted him to be unsettling. And that is for sure what he was in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so satisfying to me as a story. I kind of don't care. I'm not clear on whether it was intended to be a mystery, because it feels like it was like, this is just a story and you guys all know, right? It didn't feel like the show. If the show wanted it to be a mystery, I think they could have offered us more suspects if that was the point. And they didn't, right? We kind of thought, maybe Coral. But that's because we were looking around making it a mystery. I don't feel like the show wanted it to be a mystery. And so to me, it's just a satisfying story. And my wife was surprised because she's like, I didn't think it would be him. But everything we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, I love that this is a Darksider doing the same thing that Yoda did to Luke, but for much more, awful and nefarious reasons, to pretend to be quote unquote low status and see how they're treated and see how that worked for them. And I so agree with you about his performance. I think it's great across the board. I think it played in a meta way, since many people know him from The Good Place and know him as a phenomenal comedic actor, to have him be utterly terrifying. And we saw hints of that before. But I think the huge thing to me about his performance is there's kind of been a lot in pop culture, in my opinion, of the sort of Joker-inspired villain who is off the hook. So we're communicated how dangerous and unpredictable they are in this way that has become very predictable, where they talk very slowly and very silly and they get very mad. And it's just this like, wow, that guy's out of his mind. You can't tell what volume he's going to talk about. And sometimes he's going to do a silly voice. And like, it's to me one of those, like, that was creepy 15 years ago, but we've had a lot of it. And I love that he doesn't play any of those volume games. It's all internal. It's all like, I'm being a little goofy now to kind of mock you. And then that just really like, I hate you and I'm going to kill you, is so much more frightening than screaming.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a triumph for me. And we can talk more about guesses about the rest of the mystery and what we get to explore now that we know who's under the mask. All right, let's get into the big ideas of the episode, the big themes, the meat of our ForceCenter episode, usually about what we like to talk about here. Ken, what were your thoughts about some of the big ideas in this episode, or continuations of the big themes of the show itself?
Yeah, there's some wonderful tragic ideas of sacrifice and loyalty and relationships between those you're mentored by or mentoring. I think that's all the way through. This hiding secrets. I think there's some great stuff. I think this series has been, for me, I really like it, but I love discussing it, if that makes sense. And I don't want any that could be misconstrued as I don't know, negative. It's not. It's just like, I end every episode going, oh yeah, that's cool. What's for dinner? Oh man, but that line, ooh, I'm thinking about it, and all that leads to what I want to really put out there is this kind of perversion of freedom and the concept of freedom. And that was, I thought, the strength of The Stranger, bringing some very real world ideas we can break out and talk about, or real world as it pertains to even our own lives and experiences. He is someone so convinced that his opinions are facts that he becomes dangerous in that way. The line of freedom to wield my power the way I like without having to answer to Jedi like you is something that I think could unfortunately ring true for a lot, but also has, like any good villain, some understandable aspects to it where you're like, yeah, say with the witches, right? We got our. Don't tell us how to live. We're trying to do our thing, and then the Jedi kind of running up against that. The Jedi Order running up against that with this guy, which now makes his past even that much more interesting to me. That line of the Jedi say, "I can't exist," flipping this idea around. That again starts at a very realistic spot, but now tips into this conversation about what is balance in the Force, something that's been discussed here even last week, and for 10 years here on ForceCenter, of the idea of what is natural and what is unnatural, and how the quest for individuality, the quest for freedoms and choice is very important. I think it's important to the Jedi at some level, maybe not overall to the Order at this point. That's to be debated. But you have this one person who's saying, this is who I want to be, and I'm going to push it over everyone. And I thought that was real powerful and a great starting point for what's at stake in this episode.
Yeah, no, I really agree. I think there's a lot in there that I want to talk about, including a big idea of. I think that the Jedi and Sith are defined by their actions, and there's a lot in this episode that's about who chooses your identity. Does somebody else get to tell you who to be, or do you choose your identity based on the actual actions you take? Which I think there's a lot of fist puppy moments for the Jedi taking actions that show ultimately who they are. Whereas Kamir is obsessed with saying, I'm absolved of responsibility because allegedly you do it too, therefore I have no culpability. And it's a game that we've seen Palpatine play with Anakin and his seduction of him, saying the Jedi are just as bad as the Sith, so why not join the Sith? Why not? It's both the same side. There's a lot of sort of a game and a manipulation from here, I think, of false equivalence that starts from exactly what you're saying, Ken. As a concept, that sounds really understandable and really relatable. We all want freedom, we all want to be able to do what we want to do, but what is actually being done based on your actions? And we can talk about it a lot more, but I think there's some really interesting ideas in all of that, where I almost feel like Kamir is doing a good job of trying to seduce the audience to the dark side, in my opinion, of like, that sounds logical. So not thinking about it any more than just a fun space fantasy show, you want to go, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the guy who just mercilessly murdered a child. It is Saul's fault for bringing him here. It's sort of like, I ran you over with my car, but you were in the street. Like, so we can get into a lot more, but I want to make sure to get Jennifer in here.
No, go ahead, Ken. I want to hear
you. That's one of my things. I can't wait to discuss more, Joseph. It's dangerous, and it's not on the show's fault, but it's dangerous in this modern world where a lot of things can just be almost willfully misconstrued. Where I was listening to him. Going, this in a series that's questioning the Jedi, some people might say, yep, he's right, and that's interesting, but potentially dangerous.
Jennifer, what are your big picture thoughts? And we'll dive into the weeds, but what was your big picture thought of like what you felt this episode was about? What did it make you think of?
I don't want to say I'm Team Sith, but I'm starting to really understand where they are coming from. This because the whole idea, like you were talking about, Ken, with freedom, the freedom being threatened. May says they invaded our home. He's saying, Chimera say, or whoever, the Stranger, freedom to wield the power however I want. The Jedi say I can't exist. whoo, when he said that line, I was like, oh my gosh. Well, no wonder his agency is being threatened. And as I've been learning in school, something that they talk about is like really the triggers. And one of the biggest trigger for people is when they feel like their freedom is being taken away. And people get very angry, and it gets them to a darker place, which is another big theme that we're dealing with. How do people deal with the darkness? Is Chimera versus Master Soul, May versus Osha? Are they going to suppress it? Are they going to try and like block it out with meditation? Or are they going to embrace it and act out on it? You know, like, are they going to basically take out their trauma on other people? Obviously, we know that that's not good. But at the same time, it's understandable, right? Which goes back to the whole mystery of it all. What actually happened? We need to find out what really went down with Osha and May in their childhood.
Yeah, this is great. I think this is the heart of the philosophy of the episode, and I love that you're bringing the May Osha dynamic into it, because I think there's this sort of almost there's stuff going on with Yord and Jeki, but it is almost like a philosophical battle between Chimera and Soul, and what they say and what their choices are, and then a mirrored conflict between May and Osha about similar philosophies and choices. That line of freedom to exist, it is so powerful, but I think, in my opinion, this is what's slippery about it. When the Jedi successfully answer their highest calling, what they want to do is stop a Sith's actions. They want to stop a Sith from running around the galaxy wantonly manipulating, hurting, and murdering people. They're saying our goal is to stop those actions. And when the Jedi are at their best, hey, maybe they want to arrest a Sith. Maybe they say, you can't teach the philosophy of everyone should be selfish and murder all the time. We're going to plant that, ideological flag in the ground. I feel like he is twisting a little bit the difference between, I feel in my own real life of like, I understand everybody has a different life experience, and I'm never tell anybody not to exist. But there are actions that people take that I feel must be stopped. And I feel like that's what's at the heart for me of the Jedi-Sith battle. The Jedi slip, and that's what this episode is about, if a Sith exists, if I even think you're a Sith, I have to execute you. That's the tension in the conflict between Mace, Sheev, and Anakin. That's the tension between the Soul almost giving in to all of his anger and fear and trauma and stopping. Because then maybe, okay, you're unilaterally murdering them, But I don't think that's actually what the Jedi do when they're at their best. They stop the actions of a Sith, which is incredibly different to me than saying, you can't exist. Ken, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the twisting is the key word. I want to break it down to even, we're talking about actions. You said something about your actions are what's there. I'll slip it out into something very real world for me. It's something I know very well in the stand-up comedy world, and the push for the idea of freedom and freedom of speech, the freedom of words. And that's something I understand. I even give a lot of leeway to performers to like, all right, where are you going to go with this? But then there's a lot of those actions. It's like, I can stand by your right to say what you want, but when you just want to say things that are hurtful and destructive that I have seen the effects of in the audiences, not just killing the show, but hurting people's feelings. That's an action that pushes things in an unnatural way. And I question why you do it. I think you misunderstand, Carlin's 7 dirty words aren't just because he wanted to say 7 dirty words. He was literally fighting an oppressive, religious tinged government trying to take away those kind of thoughts. It was purposeful. It wasn't just because he liked those words. And that's lost. And so I see it all the time. And it seems silly maybe, but Chimera was like the comic is like, I want to say what I want, at the cost of other people around me, at the cost of their well-being, at the cost of their emotions, at the cost of maybe even their safety. I'm going to say it because I have a right to say it. And that's where this very important philosophical debate, because Jen, there's a lot of things you're saying that we're right. We understand. We understand, but it's this twisting of it there. Therefore, it becomes a weapon. It becomes weaponized. It becomes a trap. There's stuff with Osha and May we'll get to, and that's how I see all of this at play here. Where you said it, Joseph. It's a twist on the idea that makes it so dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's the language that he uses, like I said, the Jedi say, "I can't exist." That is very powerful. Whereas if we look at Kylo Ren, and I look at his arc, right, in the sequel trilogy, to me, it's very clear that this is a young person who had suffered some terrible trauma in his life, and he's really angry at his parents. Very angry, right? And he's really posturing, and he's like, I'm just an angry teenager. I don't think he's a teenager by that point. So, but that's very clear to me. It's very black and white. And I'm like, you're making bad choices and you're taking it out on other people. But what I think this show is doing so well, which you both have said, is that the twisting to where I'm like, I kind of see it, and we're actually seeing like the beginnings of this with this family and these two sisters, and why they would go in different directions, and how they're dealing with this trauma, how they're dealing with this terrible thing. It's just really fascinating. And that's why I feel like totally unbalanced, because I'm like, I know that the Sith are bad. I know that what he's doing is bad. You're not supposed to impale people with your lightsaber. But I'm like, when he basically, the stranger's saying, but hear me out. And I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about this. Let's try and get to the root of this. I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking anymore.
No, I think it makes it extra complicated because we still don't have full information about May and Osha and exactly what Saul did. He clearly did something that he feels bad about. So there's still lots of stuff for us to learn in this story. And in May and Osha is more complex. For me, Kamir's not complex. He comes from a long line of Darksiders and Sith who use the same tricks. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Sheev is born yet, but if he ever heard this speech, he'd be like, "Oh my God, yes, good job, dude." Because to me, that it is all false equivalence. He says things that sound good, but they are a slight twist, a slight manipulation. He repeatedly takes no responsibility whatsoever for his actions, and May does the same. Every action that she takes is because someone else made her. We can get more into the actions that the Jedi take, but Kamir, I'm just going to keep calling him Kamir. He says he doesn't have a name, but hey.
Right.
You know, when Sol says, what master hides his face from his pupil? You tell me.
Ooh.
So that's all of this is a kind of rhetorical defense that we are hearing a lot in the real world right now of like, well, you can't get mad at me for, stealing because other people have stolen before. You steal too. And like, that's kind of a conversational rhetorical game that I think we all kind of fall into on a one-on-one level, but it's now being amplified in the real world and by the Sith to be like, you're right. You shouldn't be put on trial for murder because you're not the first to murder. Sorry. Good point. Free to go. Right. That's kind of the argument that he's making of you made me do it, or you maybe once kind of did something like it before. So I have no responsibility of like, Saul, you clearly slipped and did something bad once. Yeah. We don't know how bad, and it's eating away at you. And so you and I are the same. You slipped from your high path and did something bad once. So I'm justified in always and forever doing all bad things all the time. Those things are not the same. When he murders Jackie and calls her it, Saul says she was a child. You brought her here. It's not my responsibility that I killed her. It's your responsibility. And again, like, okay, that's a discussion. Are the Jedi making a mistake bringing younger people into a battlefield? Even if the answer is yes, how in the bleep does that absolve Kamir of murdering her? He says about May, she exposed me, so now I have to kill every last one of you. I don't make the rules. The Jedi do. He's even teasing them with how they fall for this rhetorical trap. The Jedi care when they make a mistake. So when somebody says, but you did it too, they're like, you're right. And they fall to their knees and weep. And meanwhile, the Sith are laughing at him while they continue to kill and murder and use the Jedi's empathy and desire to walk a noble path against them. The freedom to wield my power the way I like sounds great, but what he's talking about is just constant murder with some, 2012 Twitter level justifications, in my opinion.
when we were still starring things.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you on that stuff. It's all a wonderful, great lie, and it all lacks the empathy and compassion that the Jedi have. It's well, both sides suck, but what's the goals of one, and what are you tossing? What are you tossing out with the bathwater along the way? And yeah, I love what you were saying. I highlighted some of that stuff too at the end of just like, I didn't do this. Look what you did, and that can seem real. That can sit with you because Saul and the other Jedi from the past are obviously sitting with what they did. And I think that I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? Really is also, a way to absolve yourself, from what you are and what you haven't, how you haven't changed. I think May and Osha have that a little at the end, and we might want to break that off and talk about that separately.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But just the I can help you return to yourself. Choose me, choose us, and that a life without purpose, a life without love, without family. He led you nowhere. I love that. That's kind of the exclamation point on this episode. All that stuff that you want. It's something I had thought of with the witches earlier. I said after episode 3 of like. They are free, but they're also trapped in their own way too. And maybe everyone is, but that's that equivalency thing coming up there too. And I love where it ends up with Chimera kind of selling the lie in a great way.
Yeah, and that I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? Also sounds like that sounds so good. That sounds like I want to agree with that. But what he's really saying is, Saul, I'm poking at Saul because you clearly did something that you don't feel proud of, and you're wrestling with it, and you're trying to make it right. And that's a wound that he's successfully pushing on Saul. And yes, Saul should deal with that. Yeah. But Chimera didn't deal with his darkness. He was like, I want to kill people and lash out with the world has hurt me, so I want to deal with that by killing and taking and doing whatever I want. I think I will. That's not confronting fear. That's not pushing past anything. That's not accepting anything. That's just like, I think I want to punch everyone here and take all the cookies. I've truly become my final form. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. We're discussing what Yord even says. He doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't make sense. He gets inside your head. His character's inside our heads. That's good.
Getting inside our heads. I definitely have more I want to talk about with the Jedi, but I also want to talk about Osha and May. Should we talk about a little bit of the Osha and May dynamic? Is that a good place to go?
Let's do it.
For you both?
sure.
All right. I thought so. Just to kick it off, I thought what was really cool is last week really set up, and we talked about a lot the idea that they're descending into the mythical dark forest, and their different masters and companions are saying, you have to go down there and face yourself and face your trauma. And I think a lot of this episode is a triumph for the Jedi. I think it's a triumph in terms of their choice, not their victory. Obviously, they lose quite badly, but emotionally, philosophically, a triumph for the Jedi, a triumph for Osha. So this whole idea is go down there and face it. Face your trauma, face yourself. May spends most of the episode literally, physically running away from dealing with anything, while Osha keeps turning back and facing things up to her deepest challenge. She had asked Yord, I don't think I can do it. Will you stop my sister? And when it came time, she tried to do the right thing and stop her sister and hold her sister accountable. That's where I kind of begin with that, because I think it is a lot of this whole show has been about facing fear. It's really interesting to see how that theme from last week played off in their choices this week. Jen, where do you go with Osha and May? Where were some of your thoughts or emotional reactions?
Certainly I had the same thought with the running away. I chuckled a couple times because I'm like, oh, this is where nope, she's running away again. Okay. I thought that was really funny and very indicative of how different these characters are. But I loved when they did finally meet up, and I really did not know if I could trust what May was saying. There is just this underlying thing where I'm like, I think she's lying. Does she what does she really want? I still don't really know. She was selling it though. Like you said, Ken, about the family and love. I'm like, yeah, the Jedi are taking her away from that. Like, that sounds pretty good to be able to be with your family and be with your friends and hang out and fall in love. So she's convincing. But there was a moment with the fight sequence or whatever was going on where I was like, wait, who's who? Oh my gosh. Like Amanda Stenberg did a phenomenal job acting out both of those parts. And then the lightsaber hair cutting. Oh my gosh. That was fantastic. It was really, really cool. And I wrote down Parent Trap, where they're switching places.
It's been going on. It's been going on.
Yeah. Ken, what are your thoughts on the dynamic between May and Osha and who is representing what?
I thought, again, how many times do we tap the wall, say duality is something that's at play here a lot. And you're right, both of you are right to point out May running away and eventually Osha turning around to face something. And we talk about processing your pain. They both went through the same pain in a roundabout sort of way, right? They were both there. We don't know all the details. We're gonna find out, I'm sure. But I liked Osha turn around to do the right thing. And this is not a Yord problem, but he was given an order, and we're going to get you back to the ship. Civilian return to the ship. Very cold, by the way. Very, very cold ruling in the moment there. But Osha knows that's not right. That's not right for her. And I loved them together, going back to those lines of I can help you return to yourself. I'm not saying that's a lie. That's something that I think May fills the loss, where Osha has gained strength from who she became, right? That's kind of the what's at play here. And May's feelings in this situation aren't necessarily wrong. She feels, choose me, choose us. Like we were together. We had the poem. Jen Landa thinks we're the same soul broken in two. I watched the show. We're together. You gotta come back. And how Osha has processed things differently, wanted something differently. And now tragically reversed. We're going to see where it goes here, and what revelations that Osha hears from the wrong source, what that does to her. But I thought it was a great way to bring home their story so far in the series, based on what we know. They're together, processing things in a different way.
Yeah, I love that they continue to be on parallel journeys, including ending the episode having switched masters for a time. And we could talk a little bit more about all the various plot dynamics and, is Basil going to sniff his way to the rescue? But I still am very anxious to, of course, see the entire story of what happened. And I want to, just like I can empathize with Anakin and Ben Solo, of like, I understand the trauma and I understand the wound that caused you to go in this bad direction. I have nothing but empathy for the wound. I still suspect to have empathy for the wounds that were caused to May. But in terms of the actions we've seen on screen so far, it is her as a child in the flashback in this episode. It's very similar to kind of Kamir in the Sith perspective, where they're making this argument of, well, why can't we all just live together? Why can't we compromise? But the thing I want is to dictate the way everything happens. She steals Osha's identity literally by the end of the episode. But as a child, and in this big finale scene here, she wants to dictate Osha's choices. Osha, even if the Jedi made mistakes, even if Sol hasn't told her the truth up to this point, Osha has had her agency and said, I wanted to be a Jedi. I enjoyed being a Jedi. I didn't feel I could live up to it, and I walked away. But I consider them my family. That's what I want. And her sister saying, no, you have to want what I want. She's certain that, May is certain that Osha has been brainwashed, which is another way to just say, I will not respect the agency of your choices. So I thought that was, to me, like one of the most powerful things. So they're both making arguments that sounded good. Even May, I think, scored some points of like, maybe that is a valid criticism of the Jedi Order. But because the Jedi Order has some flaws, her sister should have no agency, and she should be locked in exactly the relationship that May wants, exactly the way she wants it. I thought that was really a powerful part of it to me, particularly because I really felt sort of a fist pumping joy at some of the choices that Osha made. Some real classic. I might not be in the Order, but I'm making all the choices that a true Jedi should. So I was already kind of very aligned with Osha. Jennifer, do you have thoughts on that big kind of final back and forth between them about where they're both coming from? Are you still waiting to hear May's side of things more?
I mean, I really understand her perspective, and I think, but that's why I'm not 100% sure where it's coming from. Is it just selfish? Is it just that she wants everyone to be together, right? Or her family, her sister to be together? Or is there something else going on? I don't know. I really don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And I'm torn on that. But she's making some good points. Because the Jedi, they just, Master Soul's cool, but the rest of them kind of seem cold. It's a lot of school, a lot of rules. And I think I'm realizing I'm just more of a free spirit, and I'm kind of going with May and Chimera, where you could just be, man. Just be. Let me practice my witchery in peace. Like,
yeah.
Hang 10, man, on the beach.
The more I think about that other flashback episode, I'm so fascinated by, I agree. Let the witches do what the witches do. Wait, what do the witches do? I don't know. And I want to judge people by their actions. Like, it seems like the Jedi did something shady. I don't know what they did. So this show's doing a really good job of kind of, I think, putting us in that same spot that a lot of the characters are, of like, what you're saying is good on the surface, but something in my gut is saying no, and I don't have the information. Like, Osha doesn't have the information, and May just wants her to agree with her. Trust me, the Jedi are bad. Trust me, they did something awful, and unless you're going to choose me, you must choose me. I've said it before, and I will own up to it too, that I've got some real life experience of, being loved only in the way that another person decides.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I'm having an emotional reaction to what May is saying and doing. I have great empathy for her, and I think the Jedi did something bad, but I'm having this strong emotional reaction of, that's not love to dictate to somebody else, you have to relate to me exactly this way.
Yeah. I also thought it was an interesting breadcrumb, which maybe we'll talk, I don't know, canon or something later, but the breadcrumb about her mother, where Osha says, my mother did that, where she was able to get inside the mind of a Jedi. And that was when I was like, whoa, that's an interesting piece of information to drop. It also made me kind of feel like it's interesting that May is telling Osha, you've been brainwashed, where it kind of feels like May's been brainwashed by her mother, right? And the coven. I don't know.
Or whoever else she's been hanging out with, like, it doesn't seem like she's known Chimera that long, but like, so that there is like, what incredibly rough life did you have crawling out of a fire alone and then wandering the galaxy? And we're reminded that she made a deal with Chimera, and we don't know for what. Like, it was become my acolyte and you will get X, but we still don't know what X is. Which I think will also tell us a lot about May. And whatever it was that he dangled to her was not as good as having Osha back, because that's why she cut the deal. It was not just like this sudden incredible change of heart. It was just, May wants what she wants, and she wants what she's wanted apparently since a child. Is Osha right there, them twins together doing everything the way that May likes, Yeah, I think that the other big factor this episode that we've kind of talked around that I want to talk about a lot is, I felt like philosophically this was a great episode for the Jedi, because they went through a lot of facing their fear. We saw them make mistakes, throughout this show. We're going to see more. And in this episode, we saw them be arrogant. We saw them be fearful. We saw them be angry. But in all of their big actions, the things that they actually do that affect themselves and others in the galaxy, they pushed through and made the Jedi choice. The big one of Soul goes through hell, right? He brought this whole team here. Who knows? They're just Jedi red shirts to us. Did he grow up with some of those people? His Padawan slaughtered in front of him. He's stewing on this knowledge that he did do something shady, and he needs to set it right with Osha, and he just wants to get off this planet alive so he can try to set it right. And Chimera is successfully pushing every emotional button he has, and he gives into fear. He gives into loss. He gives into anger, and he's going to cut his damn head off. And I feel like in a real world scenario, a lot of us would be like, yeah, Soul, cut his head off. But because this show is putting Jedi choices under the microscope, we're all like, if you do that, you're just as bad. So it's such a triumph for Osha to show up and say, you don't want to do this, and for him to be able to stop himself. I mean, just imagine being able to stop yourself in that scenario when Mir's a true threat and has put you through such horror and hell. That moment is absolutely huge to me, and I think meant to be huge because of his line about echoing what's been this idea of Kamir wants to break the dream of the Jedi. He wants to bait them and push them into attacking unarmed people because it will prove they're just as bad. And the fact that Soul backs down and literally doesn't do it and says, Jedi do not attack unarmed people. And it has great, connections to the Anakin's turn with Mace and Sheev and all that too. So I just thought Soul, even if he has made a mistake in his past, in an incredibly difficult moment, made the Jedi choice and stopped Kamir from killing the Jedi dream. Ken, do you have thoughts on Soul's path?
I hadn't thought about it much till you mentioned it, but yeah, I like what it was, the bigger philosophy about the Jedi trying to win, and not to, don't need to break this out into the real world stuff, but just the question of how we fight is always something that's a very Star Wars thing that we brought up here, and that's not easy. It's not designed to be easy. There's even a part of me that's like, he's armed. He has the Force. That's a weapon. He's using it. Cut his head off, and then figure out the rest. But this is one victory in a larger, and it's not even about investigating who his master is. And I'm not talking about those nuts and bolts. I'm just saying in the larger picture of light versus dark, this is just one victory. And what would that actually get you if you do it in that way? If his head is severed, is the battle over? And some might argue, yeah. Some might argue, yeah. Slice his head off. Do it. Mace could have saved the galaxy if he just took out Palpatine right there. It's designed to be complicated, but in a series that is said, that's our first introduction to the stranger, Chimere, like you said, man with no name right now. Is now we're here to destroy the dream, and that's how he gets in their head, and I think it's philosophically rich, and I was happy with I was frustrated, not frustrated where I was like, yeah, kill him, but just like, man, you want to get the win here, you want to, perhaps you should, but that's not what this is about. This is a myth here to question the bigger choices in life.
How did you feel, Jennifer, about Saul's emotional journey and his choice to follow Osha's guidance for the master to follow the student and to stop himself from killing Kamir?
I hadn't thought about it until now, but going to what Chimere said, what extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. Obviously, I was relating to that, to the Sith and their actions. Yeah. But in this moment with Saul, even though it is a triumph, right? And he is able to stop himself, we also see the despair and the pain, and that he lost it. He was going to do it. And that is like a crack in the armor. Jedi are not supposed to get that, especially somebody at his rank should not allow themselves to get so emotional and lose it. So that to me is an indication of whatever's going on, whatever happened in the past, that's his despair. So I think that was such a great line. Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about that some more too, because I think it's an amazing line for looking at the Sith, and how they feel about their lives. Yeah, I think for me this is sometimes what I'm on about with Justice for Jedi. I go to Luke's line that I love in Rise of Skywalker of confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Jedi are not supposed to just be like, I'm perfect, I'm fearless. It's that you have to confront fear again and again. And it kind of ties to Jackie's line about, we're not defined, I'm forgetting exactly your line, but the spirit of you're not defined by trauma, you're defined by how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And the key moment is he decided not to. And that is the victory. He confronted fear. And I feel like a lot of the Jedi characters or Jedi line characters are confronting fear. Osha is she keeps Soul on the path. She keeps emphasizing defense. We have to turn around and fight them. She uses her connection to nature. She thinks creatively with the Pip solution. She's just entirely coded to me as a Jedi doing the best of their philosophy. She is willing to sacrifice. It's easy to ignore those beats at the beginning where the first thing she's concerned about is Pip okay? I mean, Pip's a friend, and I love you, Pip, before sacrificing her friend to try to save everybody. I think Osha is really coded as very Jedi-like. And then in terms of like a lot of the other characters and the Jedi being defined by their choices, the Jedi are there to arrest May for murdering other Jedi. That's a moment where they could slip. There so many of the fist pumping cool moments is when Sol and Jecki are fighting to keep May alive, and blocking Kamir. And I thought that was great. And then the Yord of it all. It's hard to look at a guy who got his arm broken and his neck snapped as a triumph. But I think it is philosophically because he's obsessed with rules. We've had fun with joking about it. This episode reinforces it again of I got an order from my master and we're going to follow the rules. But I think he's always been coded as clinging to rules out of fear. Because if you know exactly what you're supposed to do, then you don't have to deal with the fear of doubt or uncertainty. And he's definitely doing it here. He's terrified that he personally is going to die. And if I just cling to these rules and take her to the ship, I'll be fine. And she gets through to him. She gets through to him and says, the spirit of what a Jedi does is defense. Face your fear, turn around, and break the rules and follow the spirit of the rule and defend people. And the fact that he lets go of the hiding behind the rules and faces his fear is another victory moment for me. Ken, how do you feel about some of the Jedi choices and fear facing?
Yeah, focusing on the Yord of it all, as you said, I think it was, yes, again, can't call it a victory. I think there is, by making the bold, what I think are bold and solid decisions to end Yord and Jecki's careers, the Jedi, I think you lose some potential storytelling with them about what they represent in the Jedi Order and what could happen when that information comes out. I think we were all excited about that, right? What happens when Jecki learns her beloved master did some bad stuff? What happens when Yord's like, wait, but the rules are hurting people? That was my own expectations of what I wanted to happen. Now they're gone, at least for now. We can talk at the end of the show about some wild theories that I've already seen out there that I'm like, okay, cool. But what you just talked about is a bit of an arc for Yord. It is a lesson about the trappings of fear. Not necessarily the trappings of rules and the concept of rules being bad, but how they can trap you. Again, much like with I think the flip side is, we want our freedom to do what? Don't worry about that. We want our freedom, and we're trapped in this. And May's kind of trapped in this, and May's not processing things. And so I think I as brutal as it was. And I really think Charlie Burnett was one of the best performers on the show for me personally, and I'm gonna I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss you, Yord. But I thought it was a powerful lesson in the end, and how even in defeat, he did the right thing.
Yeah, Jennifer, how do you feel about Yord or Jedi choices in general?
He should have stuck with how he was before and not listened to her, and then he would have been alive.
There is that.
But is that the goal of the Jedi? The goal is to be willing to sacrifice yourself in the defense of others, right? I mean, that's what it says on the tin.
Yeah, that's why I actually liked him, because I was like, oh, wow, he's listening. Oh, wow, he's taking into consideration what Osha is saying. And then, obviously it doesn't turn out so well for him. It is okay, but for me, I really loved Charlie Burnett's performance, and I'm sad. And same thing with Jecki, which was cracking me up, which felt very much like Princess Bride. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. She kept like, you've done this. You've done that. You killed Master Kelnaka. I'm going to put these handcuffs on you. Like, she was so focused on the rules, which I loved. I loved that about her. And I was like, oh, I really like this character. Oh, okay. She's
yeah, and then she accuses, says you burned your family. May's like, oh no, I did not. I'm getting out of these. Her death was effective.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, just when I run down the list of in Star Wars philosophy, hearing George Lucas talk about it, what do the Jedi do? They choose the light and manage to step away from vengeance. They focus on defense, and knowledge, they are willing to sacrifice themselves. And yeah, in terms of like a round of Mortal Kombat, they lost real bad, right? But in terms of the philosophy, which is what they're on trial for, they're not on trial for, are you better at kicking ass? Are you better at surviving?
Right.
They're on trial for their philosophy. And Yord, and I think Jackie up to a point, and Soul and Osha all lived up to their philosophy in this episode, which I thought was really fascinating in a show that is continuing to question them and seems like it's still going to reveal some real bad stuff that the Jedi did, or that some Jedi did.
Oh yeah.
I wish that they had fallen in like a pit or something. Then there would have been real hope that they would have come back.
Now, Ken, at the very top of our recording, you said, the characters seem dead. Do you feel like Yord or Jackie made it?
No.
Okay, good.
I think they're dead. I want them to be dead. I'm not happy that they're dead. I think one of the best performers in the series is gone, and that worries me a little bit, if I'm going to be honest about the real world stuff. But I saw some wild, wonderful theories. And when I say wild, wonderful, it's not a bad thing. And I think I want to credit the first is Laura Kelly from Force Toast Podcast. And Shimoda and Days had something out there about, if you lost hope, here's the thing. I read it this morning. It was like, there's that red kind of thing that's fallen down. There was that real, was it Osha falls in and like spores come out, or May,
both of them.
idea.
Yeah.
Both of them. Thank you. Yeah. And that was part of it. It was that it was highlighted. And then, hey, this could be all be a dream, a vision, a horrible nightmare. And you know what? It's always possible. I'm bad at predictions and bad at theories because I don't care in a good way, meaning like just let me see next week what they do. I don't have any thoughts on it. I want to react to what they say. Maybe because I'm more of an improver in the day. Like we do, let's react to that. Let's not plan it. Let's react to it. And but I saw that it was not too long before we recorded, and I was like, it's possible, but I don't want that. I really truly believe they're dead, and I think there's great value in that. And not counting in the rest of the Star Wars shows where I don't have problems with that. I just think it's a repeated beat of people possibly getting cut and surviving. There's reasons for it. Qui-Gon got it in the heart. Other people get to the abdomen. I don't care about those
or whatever. Yeah.
I don't care about those debates. If someone comes back, there's good reason for it. And if these characters come back, there's probably a good reason for it. And I'll follow the adventure. But I think it was stunning in a good way that Star Wars has kind of maybe needed in a while in terms of stories.
Yeah, I'm extremely sad to lose the characters, sad to lose the actors, but that's what gives these death's power. If you get to season 9 and like, I'm a little tired of so and so, he gave a great speech. He was nice to a kid and he died, and like, this is what gives it its power of how much I want to be like, no, and how much the pain is going to resonate for Soul and Osha, and their deaths will echo on. But I haven't seen anything sort of thematically that makes me feel this show is interested in dealing with. And this is a magic spore planet that heals, shattered neck vertebrae and brings like, how would that? Maybe I'd be delighted to be wrong, but how would that fit into what they're dealing with? And we only have 3 episodes left, and probably some quality flashback time. It feels like we lost half the cast halfway through, but not really.
Not really. Look, and I don't mean this to. Yeah, maybe you know what? No, I do mean this to be as brutal as it sounds. I think sometimes death and loss is good for you, audience. I sometimes think Tech needs to die, and I was all on board the ideas of Tech coming back in horrible ways. Joseph still had a way an idea of Tech coming back that hurts people's souls, but I think it's good to feel a little bit of that pain, and we're feeling some pain.
Imagine the pain rewatching these episodes when it turns out well, but Jackie starts that conversation of like, you should be grateful anytime you see somebody become one with the Force. And then smash cut to being impaled 3 times is like, it is constructed to be painful, really painful. One last big picture idea that we've kind of talked around that I want to talk a little bit more about is this kind of idea about the dark side is unnatural. If, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, that the Jedi are philosophically presented in this episode of defined by their choices, and they make good philosophical choices. What is the show saying about the Sith? We talked a lot about their the false equivalency and the kind of the mind games, but there's a lot going on in here about sort of all of Khmer, the Stranger's actions being sort of polluted and gross and unnatural. There's the, Yord's line about Khmer getting in his head, and he stays there. He doesn't follow the rules of combat, and there's no method to his movements, which is a fun canon thing too, which we can talk about. And we'll talk about the armor that shuts off blades and all that, but the helmet that shuts off connection and you can't read, and is he aligned with the witches and all of that stuff. But really, it came down to that great final sentence that you wanted to share, Jennifer, of what extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. I felt like that was a Sith, a Darksider, maybe being honest that, like, there's no amount of winning that can happen because we are, by definition, alone. Because our philosophy is selfishness to the extreme. And it feels like Khmer has this great tension of, when he's asked what he's wanted and he does some manipulation, but then he says I want a pupil, an acolyte. And for me, it felt real of like, it's a strategy, but also I don't want to be alone. The same way I felt like, yeah, Maul's going to manipulate Ezra, but also he's lonely as hell and wants someone to like eat chips with, And I felt that in Khmer, and I felt like it's this sad, brutal truth of the Sith of this dogma leaves you alone. Jennifer, how did you feel about that perspective of the Sith?
I loved it. It was so real and almost vulnerable. And it, to me, is the thing about Palpatine is he's really fun to watch, right? How calculated he is, how manipulative he is. But what I think I like about the modern day villains like Kylo Ren and now the Stranger is that there is so much pain that they're experiencing, and how they're dealing with it is not right. But they can't help themselves. It's not like it's calculated. They are angry. They want vengeance. They want revenge. And they're just like almost like animalistic in how they're trying to like feel better. And I mean, that's actually very real life, unfortunately, with trauma, really terrible trauma, is that you don't have control over how you're feeling or your actions. And sometimes you might act out in a way that hurts other people and even yourself. But the pain is so deep that it's sometimes it's like it feels good, even though it's not right. And so I just love that. And it was also very much a Star Wars quote, right? Like luminous beings, are we not this crude matter? Like that's on the flip side of this. Who's going to get this tattooed on them? I have luminous beings, are we not this crude matter on my wall. I don't think I will have this on my wall.
Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. Nice tattoo.
Yeah. I mean,
it's got a little cat by it. Cool. Yeah.
If I was goth, maybe I would do it,
Yeah.
Back in my teenage years.
I just thought it was so great because I think it was embedded in the actions too, because the Jedi are fighting to save one another. They're even fighting to save May. They're traumatized by the loss, and no Darksider in this is aligned with one another. May has betrayed her master, so her master is gonna kill her. Those creatures are clearly, I think, the Umbra Moths are of the dark side, and they're like, great, we'll eat one of our own. There's no dark side. Let's work together. It's all at each other's throat in selfishness, which makes it all the more sad that Khmer seems aware that this probably isn't going to work out. But I love that I maybe have a shot at a new acolyte, how much he's going to take Osha and try to make her the one who's going to fill this gap. And like, that's not the philosophy you're going to teach her. So good luck with that. Ken, how did you feel about the Sith philosophy and loneliness?
Yeah, alone again, naturally. Yeah, I think it rings true. I think we've celebrated in a weird way. We celebrated the Kenobi series ending with Vader being alone in his castle of pain. And Palpatine celebrated it and also taunted him for, wait, do I sense some concern for your old friend?
Agitated, my friend. Yes.
Yeah, that's the wrong kind of connection. Yeah, I there should be a strain of sadness in this, and that's part of the lesson, I think. And it's also the danger of, if you have a fear of a loss of yourself or a loss of your community, and that may be very real. That can whip you up into taking away other people's communities, or trying to push yourself over on others unnaturally. That's the balancing. And side conversation. I think at some point there should just be a general conversation in the Star Wars fandom about what the concept of balance in the Force actually is. I think there's sometimes some misunderstandings in it that the light and dark are always going to exist. It's the Sith that push it over, and it's through these kind of things. We're talking about May earlier too, Jed. You had said something that made me think of. It's echoes of some of the reasons Anakin turned. It's a fear. It's real. Anakin's turn, which in 2005 I yelled about. I wanted it to be more brutal and mean and evil. He's a Dark Lord, and instead he fell to his knees crying over his lady. Like, that was kind of me in 2005. And now to see how realistic it is, and how it was fear of loss, fear of letting go. May is afraid to let go of what she knew, and again, there's going to be more details. There's a shot of maybe young May having she has the kind of the dark eyes like Torben, and who knows what's going on. It's part of the fun mystery, but whatever has happened to the stranger, to Chimera. It's a fear, it's a pain, it's a loneliness, and that should drive him forward to do these horrible things. And then he kind of realizes it. He's using it as a weapon to stoke his own flames and fires of dark passion. I don't know. Now I'm just throwing out Sith words, but it makes me not feel sorry for him, but it makes me understand the starting point.
Yeah, no, I think final thing for me is that sort of again, I really agree with you. I can't wait to see what trauma May went through, and I understand where Anakin is coming from. The fear of something bad might happen to someone you love, and I'll do anything to stop it. There's so much pain and understandable trauma at the center of all these stories, and whatever happened to Chimera to lead him on this path, I'm sure it's understandable, and I would feel bad for him for whatever happened to start him on this path. But it like Vader fell because he didn't want to be alone. He wanted to be loved, and then he made it impossible for anyone ever to be close to him, because he adopted a philosophy where no one can ever be close to you, and if they are, it's a weakness, and you should kill them. And May and Chimera end on this path. I think May ends up aligned with her former master's goals, but not with him. Like, I think she's going there, in my opinion, to like expose Saul. And Alex Damon has been espousing this theory very well, and it seems like it's coming to pass, of going there to expose his wrongdoing and kill the dream. So she might be following through with what her master's plan was, but she can never be close to her master. She can never be aligned with them, because that's just not how the dark side works. The dark side means being alone. On that upbeat note, is there any other big picture things you guys want to talk about, or should we move on and take a break?
I think there's a lot to process. Take a breath, put on your mask, process.
All right, we will take a break and be back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion. We're going to discuss some of the big canon lore things, some responsible speculation for the future, and share some of the favorite moments. So diving into the canon and lore, I'm sure most people listening to this, by the time you get it out, will have already read 800 explainer articles on Cortosis armor, which it appears to be what Chimera was wearing, is his bracers and helmets. This is a rare, or if anybody hasn't already read all these explainer articles, a rare ore that feeds back energy on itself and can short out lightsabers briefly. Is originally introduced in the Legends book I, Jedi, but the idea was from Timothy Zahn himself. It's featured in modern canon in a big way in the book Thrawn Alliances, also in New Dawn, and a Dr. Aphra arc in the comics. So this is definitely a Legends / publishing idea that has made its huge leap to the big screen. Jennifer, how did you feel about it? Were you confused? Did you think it was cool? Did you think it was meaningful? How did you feel about it?
I did not know the origins of Cortosis. Is that correct? Of course, I read the explainer articles and tweets, or whatever they're called, X's, afterwards, where they're like, suck it, Beskar. That was fun. But what I wrote down, I had wrote down so many times, new, the headbutting, the lightsaber, it looked like. the what was it? The gauntlet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so cool to see it the lightsaber short circuited in that way. And it just was like, ooh, this is like the big boss in a video game. How are the Jedi gonna beat this guy? And so yeah, and some of them unfortunately did not.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. I knew about cortosis because it is a big part of Thrawn alliances, and we talked about it and its sort of meaning and all that. But there's a lot to remember, so I was just like, cool. Happy that it is something that is from the publishing side. But I just thought exactly, Jen, new of it was a cool way to keep combat varied. And for me, I always like it when things are like, well, that's cool, but also, what does it mean? And for me, so much of this has been predicated on we're going to make the Jedi break down and feel guilty for ever even considering attacking an unarmed opponent. So I'm going to wear armor that causes the Jedi to become, to have no weapon so I can stab him in the back. And like, Kamir is so successfully chiding the Jedi for not following their rules. But even at the end, he's like, rules, can't break them if you don't follow them. And the armor sort of, to me, also goes along philosophically with where he's at, as well as just being cool and making new combat choices. Ken, how did you feel about it all?
It's a great cheat, man. I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna beat you without your weapon. Oh, my weapon takes away your weapon. So I liked it. I was vaguely familiar with it. I had to get reminded as well. Luckily, social media on all apps is there to not only remind you of the episode, but to give detailed plot points seconds after the episode ends. Awesome. You're all great for that.
No.
I wasn't spoiled, but it's just some ridiculous things. Everyone calm down. Pump the brakes on posting right after episodes. Seriously. But this eventually does help. And yeah, I remember it from the Thrawn stuff for the good. I actually really liked it in Thrawn. I don't remember it from too much in the past. But it was to be reminded that Count Vidian, like the first new villain of Star Wars in 2014, Count Vidian had parts of it on him. It's a fun callback now. But at the end of the day, I liked it. At the end of the day, I didn't need to know what it was. It just was like you said, a cool and at times wonderfully confusing thing. At first, I thought he had cut their blades in half, but then the blades come back to life. I love that. I thought it was used so well. It gave you such a sense of false hope with Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Blades are back. She got it.
Another one of those, like, the triumphant moment. She's gonna make it. Double blade. Yeah. So cool. And it just, I think it just made me feel what the Jedi were feeling too. Of like, everything is chaos and confusion. Who is this guy? Why does he fight like this? Why does he make me feel like this? Why is I'm not going to make any jokes, but just like that, this is a symbol of power and confidence, and whoops, it's gone. Disconcerting.
I think there's great purpose to it. It's a fun pull forward from an old Legends thing and Star Wars canon, as we talked about. But again, I thought there was some good use of it in a series that's making even the Jedi question themselves, to take away that symbol that Sol puts before Osha as a child. Like, what does this mean? Don't you want, like, it's not a weapon, it's a symbol. That's perfect for the series. Perfect for the series. For to have that, even though you could fight without it and all this kind of thing, but to have that moment of, this is who I am and it's gone. What do I do with that?
Yeah, in a cool action arc to see the surviving Jedi who figure it out and work with it as well. So moving on, one of the great debates around this show is who can know about the Sith. Will the Acolyte protect our precious Kiadi-Mundi's very cocky line in the Phantom Menace and all that? Much discussion still to be had there, but I think this episode went a lot toward who can know about the Sith, because not Jecki and Yord, or any of those other 4 red shirt Jedi. Ken, how are you feeling now that the show has turned into the knowledge is being whittled down of who saw this person? And we're just getting into responsible speculation. Do you feel like it's Sol and Osha who are Jedi aligned, who walk out there going, there's a dark sider and kind of, we'll talk more about it, but kind of uses the name Sith. Do you feel like Sol and Osha will die? Do you think they'll have motivation to hide it? Do you think they will try to tell people and not be believed? What do you feel are the options for the survivors who know about Sith?
You said people going to die. Wow. Yeah. I think again. I think they are always aware of playing around with Ki-Adi-Mundi's beliefs and the Jedi's beliefs of that time of what they thought they knew or what they were hiding. I still think going back to 1999, like it's something that Ki-Adi-Mundi believes at that point. So I think they're still playing with that in a fun way. And so yeah, no one's on safe ground for me. You know, we don't even. I know there's talks of we'd love a second season. At this point, it might be a anthology with a bunch of new Jedi and a new Acolyte, because I don't have a lot of hope here for everyone coming out of this unscathed. There's a lot of wiggle room. Like I said, we'll talk about it, and the Knights of Ren of it all is present, and I get it. And I get that as a fun theory. I'm actually maybe slightly even behind it a little bit now, but the word was used. Kind of, and I think there, for even the character, the stranger, to be like, "Hey, I've said a word that you can't be around to hear," is kind of fun.
How do you feel about it, Jen? How do you feel like what does it mean for Soul in Osha?
You know, what's really funny is I didn't even really think about the canon connections. I was just thinking about it like when somebody's, on a terrible murder spree and they're like, well, you can't see my face because now you could identify me. Right. So I just was thinking about like real world.
Understandable.
There's mention of the Sith, I don't know, in the prequels. Anyways, yeah, I don't really know how. This is where I rely on you guys and everyone on the internet to educate me. You guys do it in a nice way.
Safe. On internet, that's a safe thing to do.
You guys do it kindly. You bring me in. But yeah, the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi of it all, like I'm just like, okay, whatever you present to me is what I'm going to take. And I just see this story and I think of what Leslie Headland said, where she left it all on the table for this season. She's not assuming there's a second season. Right. So I think anyone dying, even our main characters, is fair game. And so it's very likely that Master Soul and Osha are going to be dead at the end of this season, so that nobody is able to tell the tale of this not Sith. So we'll see.
I want to see Basil in the center of the Jedi Council screaming. And as my wife said, like, oh, the only person who understood him is dead because Yord knew his language. But just like Basil screaming at Yoda, and Yoda's like, maybe the Sith do exist. And I know Ki-Adi disagrees with me, but I think it's people point out that Yoda seemed aware of the rule of two in the Phantom Menace, and Ki-Adi had his take that they could not have returned and that they have been extinct, and that is Ki-Adi-Mundi's perspective, maybe the orthodox perspective of the Jedi.
And others too. But by the way, Mace says something similar. Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones says it too. Everyone kind of had that belief.
Yeah, it was pretty agreed upon. I think the way it's shaking out, the way it was such a point of, no Jedi who are aware of me can live. You made me kill you. Like, Kamir's making a point of it. I feel like sometimes there's Star Wars storytelling where like a cool idea comes up and then everybody on the Star Wars team is like, yeah, we got to zig and zag to make it work. And then there are sort of canon things that I think challenge audiences, but they end up being the point. Like Din being a part of a group of Mandalorians who don't take their helmet off and needing to come back together with people who are of the same community but have a different, belief system. Ended up being the point. It ended up being a gift, not a problem that you gotta, if you kind of fudge this, you can get around to this. This is feeling much more like Mandalorians wearing their helmet. That how does it end up that the Jedi generally understood and agreed upon belief, 100 years from now is that the Sith have been extinct? It seems like the point, not something that needs to be just kind of jostled into position. And that's why I'm interested. Like, do they die? Do they choose to hide it, in a defining way? Are they just not believed? Because that would say a lot. Do they tell Vernestra and she's like, great, let me put it in the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones. I'm just filing it away and nobody's, I think that's the story.
The problem being the point is something that we should also write on a wall and just tap as well. Often because it was the hubbub over the Grand Inquisitor being, quote, killed off early on in the Kenobi series. Like, everyone's aware of what you think the problem is. Everyone's aware.
Yeah.
So it might be the point. Just give it, or it might be part of what the story is. So I'm excited to find out. And again, the way he played with it, theories to come. But like, some Jedi might call me Sith, because they have a limited understanding of what the dark side is, or what users of the dark side is. Yeah, all that stuff could still be in play.
Yeah.
It just, none of the characters heard Leslie Headland's interview, but she wanted to tell a Sith story, so I'm going to take that as at its word. But yeah.
Well, I mean, we get a Sith perspective. He monologues about what the Sith perspective is. So mission accomplished. Let's talk a little bit about Kamir and speculation there. His line of dialogue is, "I have no name, but a Jedi like you might call me Sith." And that also feels like some amount of the loneliness of, like, I don't even have an identity. I feel this natural darkness, and I want to slaughter my way through the galaxy, and you won't let me. Poor me.
Right.
And also pushing a button with the Sith. But it also doesn't feel like, haha, yes, I am Darth so-and-so, and I am defying my master, Darth. There's also the Osha feeling like his power might be similar to the witches. So, Jen, do you have speculation about who he really is? Does he have a relationship with the witches? Is he outside of the rule of two, which is something I'm really fascinated with?
I mean, I thought initially there was some relation to the witches until I went to the internet and I saw. Because what really struck me about this character was his costume and seeing his bare arms. And I thought that was such a distinct choice. But like many things with Star Wars, with something like that, I can go to the internet and be like, oh, there is a history behind this. And people are saying that he is the first Ren from the Knights of Ren. And I love that theory. I am 100% on board. It makes sense to me. It makes sense as to why we all were like, well, his mask look a lot like Kylo Ren's mask, right? I think it's a great theory. So, and one last thing I want to say. So back in the day, I used to joke that the Knights of Ren were like America's best dance crew, because they kind of had that dance when they would come out, right? Like they were going to have a dance battle. I'm hoping that there is video somewhere. Manny Jacinto was in a dance crew. And if he could do some dancing, there was even some moments where it looked like the way he turned, it looked like, oh, he's going to do a pop, lock, and dance. Oh, please, somebody bring out that video of him in costume dancing.
Sadly, popping and locking alone, because the Jedi won't let me pop and lock in public.
In the rain.
Yeah. We've all had these discussions of, oh, maybe he's the master or the student, the apprentice in the rule of two, and he wants his own acolyte. The way he said this really, in his whole poor me loneliness vibe, really feels like this is a guy who found a haunted book that told him how to be a Sith. And maybe he's even approached the quote unquote real Sith and been rejected by them too. I'm not getting a vibe of he is a part of the rule of two. I love the Knight of Ren thing. That would be really cool. My weird headcanon is that the villains introduced in the High Republic, the Nile, that the few survivors of that group become the Knights of Ren. But this would absolutely track with that. Partially because there's a lot of connection with the author Charles Soule, and there's some imagery of the Markian Rose helmet, which is also in this sort of path of alignment from Markian to Kamir to Kylo. There's some connections, so I'm kind of fascinated with that. Ken, what are your wild Kamir speculations and desires?
I'll start with what you just brought up of him being outside the system, of outside the rule of two. I think that makes more sense for me now. There's something about the spirit of his words in this episode that had this kind of, I'm so lonely, I'd love to have a friend, and I'm gonna form my own club. I like that. Whereas prior to this, I was all in on I think he's the apprentice, and I think we still have a master. Or he's a master, which means the apprentice. I still like the idea of someone else in the classic system, the classic rule of two. I'd be excited. I don't need it to be anyone I know. It could be someone new. It could be a tragic choice that some people are putting out there. And I'm not going to lock myself in on the Knight of Ren theory, but look, down to the point where the Kylo Ren's theme plays over the moments where he's when Osha's on the ground and he kind of rolls her over and he gives the speech. Kylo's music's playing. Unless it's so close that Kylo should sue for song plagiarism. It's so close, and the imagery, the helmet. I don't disagree with it at all, tying it to some Mark and Row. Basically, if you got guns and you're showing up with them to a fight, like you might be a Knight of Ren. Even though Kylo, Kylo doesn't, show the guns unless Rey accidentally pops up while he's getting ready for bed. But the comic, The Rise of Kylo Ren, I mean, the imagery's there. Is it a clue that we all discovered and we shouldn't? Is it there for a reason? Is it red herring? I don't know. That's part of the fun of it. But the big thing for me is exactly what you said. Is I think coming out of this episode, I am more maybe even interested in the idea, but more behind the idea that he's not in the classic Sith system as we had thought. He's adjacent or wants to be in. I love the rejection idea too.
Yeah. And if he's a Knight of Ren, that's a cool connecting a bunch of threads, and I trust this show to have it also be meaningful, not just that's an answer to be put in on Wikipedia, but it will mean something. I can see something too, where like the Jedi discover, maybe he kind of wins this sort of philosophical battle, and kills some more people, wounds some more people. He dies. The Jedi find his, Knight of Ren charter and like, see, he wasn't a Sith. He was following this other dogma, and maybe he gets, he's not a Sith, and maybe Darth Tenebris does pop up at the end and just take him out and go, nope, no pretenders.
Right.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Final kind of speculation thing I wanted to talk about is, does Sol know about the switch? Does Sol know that he's in the Parent Trap, Jen? Baz is clearly sniffing the remnant of Pip. Rest in peace, Pip, and following along. So we got a thread of this is going to be exposed sooner than later. I can totally understand Sol being incredibly distraught. May knows she's putting on an act, but that's also been established. That was a long walk in silence back to the ship. So what are your thoughts on what Sol might know or feel?
One would think that he would get a sense, right? He's very powerful. He senses a lot of things. How could he not sense that darkness in May? Also, I just want to say I love May's walk. Even when she is pretending to be Osha, she has this swagger that's almost like a slither. It's really specific. And I love how she kind of goes back and forth between trying to be Osha and still being May. It's like this, it's this dangerous quality. I just, great. But yeah, I think he's going to figure it out fast, especially and be like, what is it, Basil? Is there danger at the mill?
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, what are your thoughts on what Sol knows?
I think it's tragic that Yord is gone, and they made a point to say he was the only one that could understand him. I would like to point out, I think there's probably a protocol droid out there who could give it a try. We'll see. Now, I'm not talking about 3PO. I'm just talking about a protocol droid. But are they going to be able to do that? Is there a Jedi translator droid hanging around? I don't know. But it's fun. It's very much on purpose. It's part of the tragedy. And Basil just becomes the most important character in the galaxy at this point to figure it out. There is something. I don't know if Sol is on board right now. I think he's too distraught, right? I think he's got to get back, walk. He's got bodies they're not even bringing out. They're not bringing out the dead. They're leaving them there. So he's got to get back. He's got to recenter himself. But the idea that he does figure out sooner than later, and does he view it as a chance to correct a mistake in the past? And is that a mistake in of itself? It doesn't seem like he'd be like that he'd be unconcerned for Osha's well-being, right? It wouldn't like, oh, wait, you're May? Oh, that's cool. All right. Okay. You know what? I'm going to go with this. It seems like he'd still be concerned about Osha. But I like the idea of him going, all right, the Force is giving me an opportunity to win her over. Just as a lot of people fear that Osha's going to be won over by the stranger once he lays out a lot of these truths that are complicated and real and painful. So I don't know if he knows now, but I definitely think he's going to find out soon enough.
Yeah, I think Osha's going to be challenged, but I think based on her actions in this episode that she might not want to associate with the Jedi. She might be mad at Saul, but I don't think she is going to choose the dark side based on her actions in this episode. Yeah, to me, there was a part of me that I found myself wanting the story to be that Saul knows it's May, and he's been wanting to try to face his fear. He's the one who seems to be aware that something very bad happened on Brendok and has been trying to process it for years, where some other characters gave into the guilt or ran away from it or denied it. And he keeps telling Osha, I will tell you the whole story when we get back to the ship. You know, he's about to tell her in the dark wood when May stuns him. So there's a part of me that would be like, ooh, wouldn't that be cool if he was just like, I know it's May. I'm going to get you on the ship. I'm going to turn and say, I know it's you. I'm facing my fear. Let's have this out. Yeah. But I don't think he'd do that, knowing like, and Osha's out there unconscious somewhere. Don't worry about it. So it makes me ultimately feel like he's just too distraught, and he doesn't. The dime hasn't dropped yet.
Yeah. Now, if May's to convince, Osha's dead. I saw her die, and that's part of it too. I don't know, it could be, but
yeah,
fun. We're gonna find out.
All right, let's talk some favorite moments. This was just full of awesome action. So I want to be sure to shout out some of the just cool and meaningful moments. Jen, what were a few favorite moments for you?
Oh my goodness. I can't even keep track of everything, but I will say, like I mentioned, I loved all the fight sequences, specifically the strangers fight sequences, which had a very, I don't want to say Matrix-like quality to them, but it just felt very dance-like, which when I mentioned Manny Jacinto has a dance background, and that he did do most of those stunts, which is amazing. I just thought that all of them, Daphne Keene was fantastic. They're so fast. And, you know, a lot of times nowadays the camera will cheat, right? And they'll kind of like do close-ups and this and that. But we really got to see their bodies and how quick they were. They trained incredibly hard. And I just thought it was really fantastic.
Yeah, I really agree. They were visceral, and you could feel the fear that this, powerful, flowing, awful nightmare is slicing at you from every angle was really visceral. And then there were just some I don't agree with the choices, but it was cool. Like when he pulled the second Jedi onto the blade, and then behind the tree cut both their heads off. Yeah, the Jedi shish kebab, and then off with their heads. Just brutal, but also on that part of Star Wars that is the action and the lightsaber fights and fast ships. It's cool action, and it felt fresh. Ken, do you have a few moments?
Yeah, I think overall the fighting really worked for me. I'm someone who I had some issues with the prequel fightings during the prequel era. That's gone away, and it's just I accept what George Lucas says. Yeah, it's top stars at the top of their game having top flight fights. Like that's what it is. It's different than what you saw in the original trilogy, kid. So I've been on board ever since then. But I think that some of the sequel stuff is there's a rawness to them that I enjoy. But this got me, especially on second viewing, like you said, Jen, them kind of pulling back at times so you could see some stuff going on. Very, very Phantom Menace-like in particular. And Leslie Headland being, pretty honest and open and bold going into the series of we wanted to even top those. I'm a prequel kid. This is what I'm feeling. Also, I'm an EU Knights of the Old Republic video game kind of fan. That vibe was here as well. So a lot of those moments, I could break it down individually. The sabers and pulling them and killing them and brutal. But I think the little moments of even Jackie's death, it's so brutal because you're sad about Jackie, but then, man, what an intro to your unmasking. Well done. So there are a lot of those little moments as well. But I just, in terms of big moments, I mentioned up top, immediately didn't love this episode. I just was kind of like, yep, fighting, death, got it. Was in a different headspace. It was the second time around. My favorite moments are the stranger speaking those truths and telling no lies and just kind of coming. I think that was the stuff that won me over in this episode versus even some of the action, which was great.
Yeah, I just felt like they were really, really married. And every once in a while, even a great episode of Clone Wars will be this has amazing dialogue, and then the clones shoot droids for a while. And sometimes they're not entirely woven together. And this was so woven together. I love Jackie's noble end as an action moment. I love seeing, again, a sort of a triumph of Jedi of being observant and adapting and hammering on his helmet with the hilt to take away the advantage, but also to do what a Jedi is supposed to do, which is fight for knowledge. They need to know who he is. They need to know who they're dealing with. And it's this victory moment And then the oh surprise, I have a second blade. I have a little Shoto blade. Is Star Wars cool? But also, again, this guy's going around the galaxy trying to make the Jedi feel bad for, cheating a little. And his whole thing is like, I brutally killed this child with a cheat, you know? All of that is like, oh, it's a cool action moment and a brutal action moment, but it's just imbued with character ideas and thoughts to me. I felt the way about Yord's Noble End was one of my favorites. Not his actual neck snapping, but Yord, the rule follower, decides to, nope, I got to turn away from those rules and put, defense first and put fear aside. But then his actual move of he comes in and he grabs the stranger's helmet with the Force and uses the helmet to short out Kamir's blade is like Yord adapting to the rules. And through this whole show, Yord hasn't been really great at adapting or being inventive. And it was bittersweet that his final action was adapting and observing a new set of rules and adapting to them. So cool action moment that had meaning to me as well.
Yeah, a lot of meaning. The purpose of the fight's saving, defending. Yeah, it's all. You're right to point it out. It's all part of the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Put into
a couple more for me. They were just fist pumping. Jackie makes a huge leap to block Kamir's killing blow on May. And that was a cool action moment. That's again like she was desperately trying to arrest her, but she can't die. Jackie'd die before she'll let May die. Cool on both levels. Yord's dialogue and his delivery, he doesn't follow the rules of combat and there's no methods to his movements. It doesn't make sense. It's a fun Yord line. But it's also like a fun canon line. I probably should have thrown it up in our canon discussion of like, yeah, these Jedi don't think they're ever gonna fight a Sith, So that I thought that was great on multiple levels. I really liked it. It was a very different shot. Speaking of new, when May is running from Kamir, and we get this close up of his helmet kind of flying at you and calling her a coward, like
terrifying.
He's literally chasing her, so it's literal. But it's also like extremely like Hitchcockian nightmare. Yord says he gets in your head and stay there. And it's like what she's feeling. Yeah. He might not even be behind her, but she feels like he's always right behind her. Like that's what she's been seeing this entire show of him right behind her going, coward, I'm going to kill you. Coward, I'm going to kill you. It was a great variation in the direction and the shots to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think I like how you tied it to Yord's light. I think that worked for me.
Yeah. A lot of other things, but the last one I'm going to share is, in a really brutal, dark episode, I did love that there's still like this little bit of extremely dark comedy when Kamir's asked why risk discovery, and he says, "Well, I did wear a mask."
yeah.
It is. Great. It's so great when you have a comedian who's like, hey, look, I can do all sorts of other things. I'm a dancer. I'm one of the best fighters on screen you've ever seen. I can be the scariest MFer on the planet, but also like, but comedy's still in my quiver. So
good.
Yeah, well, and it spoke to, he wasn't there to reveal himself. He's probably there to kick ass, take names, kill people, and get on with his mission. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, you did that to me. I didn't want to reveal myself.
Yeah. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. All right. Ken, was there anything that you ultimately disliked or questioned that we haven't discussed?
I think, like I said up top, I enjoy the use of wipes. I've seen it pointed out other spots. I think there was a little over-reliance on them here where transitions between scenes, complete entire scenes and location switches, it works for me in a fun way because it's George. And I love it, but I think there was a couple times here I could have done with a little bit without. I'm tired of myself talking about how some things look. It's just going to look a little bit different. I will point out to a lot of folks with this. We even get a lot of comments. $180 million for a TV series is not not a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot in this modern age. So. There's some, where's all the money going? That's a bad complaint. But there's some things that rub up against me every week, and I just have to let go of it. Right? It's a lesson there. So some of the stuff doesn't work for me in that regard. And weird editing choices. I get hung up on that stuff a little bit on the first time out, and that's part of what we always talk about here at ForceCenter. That's why we don't run to a screen or a camera and start talking about things right away. because these pieces of art deserve our mulling over. And it's not that you need a second viewing. It's not that the show needs it. I think we need it. And the information comes at us so fast and heavy these days that it's okay to take a breath and go, all right, I maybe didn't like that scene's editing, but what was the scene doing? Mm-hmm. What was the scene speaking about? I still land there all the time, but this episode, that's probably why I didn't love it immediately like others did. But I did come around. I wanted that, like the third act of Last Jedi, pay attention. That's the point of the movies. In the third act, I came around on.
Yes. We all stumble. It's how you respond. Yeah. Not that disliking this is a stumble, but you know what I mean. Jennifer, was there anything you disliked your question?
No, it had a moment where I thought it reminded me so much of The Last Jedi. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the fog. I don't know. But I in that moment, I thought, gosh, I really wish that this was a movie. I really wish that I could be in the movie theater here when they're going and like you hear every little crunch of the sticks or whatever. And, they're terrified with those Umbra moths. I want to be in the movie theater hearing that around me, right? Like a very Jurassic Park moment where it's like, oh guys, something bad's gonna happen, something scary. That's what I really wanted. But other than that, I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We talk a lot about budget and how something looks and all that, but the sound is a huge factor in feeling more fully immersed.
Yes,
and I mean, imagining people gasp and lose their minds at some of the deaths. I mean. Yeah, explaining that experience with that different community, I can understand that, Paul.
Yeah, you mentioned something too, and I don't want to get so lost into it, but it's part of this battle of because I don't go to theaters, I don't go out and see movies much. I would have gone for the Acolyte in a theater course. I'd be there 16 times in a week. I'd see this, but even the little things. We've got a new TV, so we haven't got the sound bar what we needed. My sound right now sucks. It sucks. It's so flat and tinny in a way because we need to repair. We need to fix that. And so this episode, at times, not just this episode, but a lot of what I'm watching on TV feels flat, and it's not all around me. And some people have perfect sound systems in their homes, and they don't need to worry about that. Right. But I think sometimes that's the feeling of loss you have of TV versus a movie, or by yourself versus a crowd. Those are all things that you can measure out. But even you mentioned the sound thing. That's been a problem in my life for the last 2 months. Even them dragons on the House of the Dragon don't sound as good right now.
Yeah,
we're at in the modern age.
And we have a very fine sound bar. I mean, sometimes when I watch through again on my computer with even just fine earbuds, there's nuances that you pick up. Yep. For me, like I loved this episode. That doesn't mean that I don't have things, and we put it at the end of the episode because it's a choice to focus on what we love. It's a choice of how much time we give. The things that we like versus the things that we're challenged by. I did think there was that one awkward edit for me into daytime. May stuns Soul, and then what ended up happening narratively is immediately on the next beat, Osha walks up to May as the sun begins to rise, which I really liked. Is a conceptual idea that there's this sort of audience deception of, oh, is maybe everything going to be okay now? Or the sisters going to unite? Is this a new dawn? And then the sadness when you realize they're still having the same conflict that they had when they were children before the fire. So I love that the sun is coming up, and I don't know how long a night is supposed to last on this planet that I've never heard of before, Kofar. So I don't care about that. So it was that the traditional language of film is a cutaway establishing shot of the environment usually suggests a passage of time. So I had that, oh, I think time has passed, or we're shifting locations. Like, nope, no time has passed and we're not shifting locations. It's a different angle. So that's an example of a kind of thing like, hey, that's a criticism for me, but I'd rather focus on how much I love in the episode than, be like, you lost 8 demerits, and for myself also, it really trying hard to work on film stuff. No matter how much money or time you have, no matter how big you are, sometimes you have to make compromises. Maybe they didn't get the shot they needed, and they needed that shot. And like maybe the creators are like, yeah, we know. It's what we had to do. It happens sometimes to the most expensive television shows and movies ever. Any other qualms, concerns, or anything?
No.
Okay. All right. I will throw this one out and then I'll let go because to my fellow action figure friends. I so wish that the action figure pipeline could catch up to shows and come out with the shows or a little bit before. I know this is very much yelling at the clouds, like in my day they came out 3 months before the movie, but the action figures are only available for pre-order, and there's some in Black Series, there's some in Vintage, there's a retro set. And for a character like Jackie and like Yord, it's a little to be like, I can't wait for my pre-order of a murdered child to arrive. There's a part of me is like, I would have liked to had those action figures and have that relationship before the characters fall. That's not a criticism of the show. It's a wish for the whole marketing machinery of Star Wars.
Look, just think of the poor people who have already got their Jackie Jam and Yord Horde tattoos.
Oh,
I mean, it's a permanent reminder of a character you love and lost. But
Yep. All right, heading towards our wrap up here. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that either of you wanted to touch on, Jen?
I think overall, what I loved about this episode is it took what we saw with Vader in Rogue One, which I loved, seeing him cutting down the rebels. It took that. And I think Daphne Keene even referenced it in an interview. She said, this is our villain. We're not just saying he's a bad guy. We're not just saying he's big and scary. We are seeing his actions. We are seeing him being scary. And I thought that was what I really, really liked. The episode felt violent. It felt personal. And that to me is something thrilling to see in Star Wars. It feels like Star Wars has been kind of safe in more recent years in the streaming era where I'm like, I know they're going to get outfined. This, we learned our heroes are not going to get out just fine. And I feel like that was a triumph.
No, I agree very much. I think we touched on the majority of things I want to talk about, but just as a summary, I will echo what you said. I think the stranger Khmer is so successful in the thrill and the fear of not only him as this sort of unstoppable force who fights in a way that they don't understand, but gets under their skin in some sort of a creepy, magical way. And also just with every word, he's poking at their wounds. So the whole episode has this great, horrible feeling of our heroes are faced with a nightmare. And they're confronted by this thing that is their fear. And can they hold on to themselves in the nightmare, in the dark wood, when they're trapped with the monster? It just captures that feeling so beautifully. Ken, any final thoughts from you or anything that we haven't talked about?
No, day and night. I think you're going to forever watch these as 2 episodes back to back. Maybe that's even another complaint I had. Maybe they just should have been 1 episode, but hey, that's out of the creator's hands, I believe. But in terms of final thoughts, and the biggest accomplishment of this episode for me was really kind of not wiping the slate clean, but saying we are now, and we have 3 episodes where it's even harder to predict. Some of the stuff that we gave you some crumbs. Yep, good for you. You guessed Khmer was in the mask. Yep, that was part of maybe what we wanted you to do, because now there's some great unknowns. And this is one of the benefits, like I said up top, of going to a new era and new characters, which even I've never been against, but I've always been like, I like my pal Obi-Wan. I like hanging out with Obi-Wan. I don't have a problem with that. I like Tatooine. Let me go hang out there again. But the flip side, this is they're using it to the best of their abilities and to their advantages with wonderful, exciting, open road in front of us.
Yep. Want variety, want that Star Wars buffet. I'd be thrilled if they announced Kenobi Season 2, and I'd be thrilled if they announced Acolyte Season 2. They both have different, I think, pleasures and rewards. We always strike to end with a fun question. We were real short on time last week, so we didn't end with a fun question, but we're going to this week. If we could have a figure or merch of any character or idea from this episode, what would we want? Ken, what would you like from this episode?
You know, I have that life-size Wicket from the Tree of Endor, Emerald Moon folks. How about a life-size Basil?
Oh,
with a Pip, because I love Pip. I'm really sad about Pip, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that Pip's going to come back. But how about a life-size Basil? Because my Chihuahua would love that. Why not just scare a Chihuahua?
I love that. A Basil lawn ornament that just screams day and night.
Yep.
Great. For myself, I want Basil. There's no need for me to speak into wanting a stranger Khmer action figure, because the Darksiders always get made. We will be drowning in Darkside stranger action figures within seconds, and probably announced while we're recording. But I really there isn't a vintage collection Yord that's been announced now. And now I kind of want a battle damaged Yord with a loose neck.
Oh.
It's so
brutal.
Hard. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Brutal.
I am still gonna buy a Yord action figure. I love that character.
Yord's great.
I hope he's having a fun time in the Force. Jen, if you could have a figure or merch of any character for this episode.
Yeah, I want a music video, and because it came into my head when you guys were talking about Osha turning around, and I want Total Eclipse of the Heart. Turn around every time I get a little closer. And just Osha just turning around throughout the whole thing, and then reuniting with her sister, right? I think that'd be great.
Now I mention a version of the music where it's turn around, and then the person turns around and just stuns the singer. Every now and then a hoot.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Ken, do you want to take us home and tell people where they can find us?
Yes, we are the ForceCenter Show. We are on social media at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Facebook at ForceCenter Podcast, Instagram and YouTube as well. Subscribe here if you will, but also this coming Friday, June 28th, 2 p.m. Pacific, our live stream Q&A. We want your Star Wars questions, and another one will come in mid-July as we get ready for the finale of The Acolyte. You can get us as a podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search, you'll find us. If we're not there on your favorite, let us know. Maybe we can add ourselves there. We have merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter, and you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Follow me at Ken Napzok for show updates. Got a lot coming locally. Still got some tickets remaining for the show at Flappers this coming Sunday, June 30th. Going to be up in Seattle on July 5th and 6th. I got Joseph Scrimshaw's birthday spectacular. Wonderful variety show in mid-August, and more dates announced. Go to my website for more. Jen, where can they find you and your music video that I think you're going to need to make?
Oh my goodness, if only I was back in my music video days. You can maybe find those at Jennifer Landa on the internet somewhere, or on TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
Just type in Jennifer Landa dance Grand Central Station, or still one of my favorite videos. Joseph, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw. And you can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for links to film stuff and to that birthday show Ken is talking about. It is Friday, August 16th at 7:30 p.m. Pacific at the Lyric Hyperion. If you're local to L.A., come and join us. It is called Horror Years Old. It's going to be a fun comedy variety show about aging. But here's the new information. If you are a ForceCenter listener who lives anywhere, we are going to live stream the show, and you can buy tickets right now to live stream the show if you want to watch Ken, myself, and several other great friends do some fun comedy together. There is a link to those tickets on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. That is it. This has been the Acolyte Report.